Hey everybody, this is episode 74 of Reanimated, podcast about all things zombies, undead, mostly zombies. This episode is brought to you by Squarespace, all-in-one platform that makes it easy to create your own website. If you are a first-time user of that website making website service, you can use the offer code zombie, not case sensitive at checkout, and you'll get 10% off. There, the business out of the way. Thank you, Squarespace. My name is Stuart Tiffin, and I'm being joined from the East Coast by H.A. Conrad. How are you today?
I am amazingly well.
So amazing.
Amazing.
Well, I'm glad that you were able to make it here so that we can talk about this horrible film that we're going to be talking about today, 1992's Dead Alive by
Well,
Peter Jackson.
I guess I know how you feel about it.
I will withhold all further comments until we begin the review portion of the podcast. But before we get to that, because we do have some zombie news to speak of, and so I will let you kick this one off, AJ.
All right. Well, so first up, this is just a little thing I found on Petapixel, and it is a photographer's zombie wedding shoot. Pretty well done, actually. It looks basically like movie stills, and so just shows this couple. We've seen a couple of these before, I think, but
Yes.
this one was pretty well done. So I just threw it up there, and he also talked about his process and how he presented it. He did like storyboarding and things like that. Just kind of a fun little project and not your normal wedding photography. So,
I
you
really
know,
like the storyboarding
I
actually,
did
and
too.
the fact that the lighting is also pointed out. I assume this is all done with green screen.
Yeah, some of it, I'm not sure exactly, but in any case, I thought he did a pretty good job, and I liked the whole process notes and the behind the scenes. So that was kind of cool. Plus, the couple seemed pretty game and into it, so I thought that was pretty just a nice touch in the world of schmaltzy wedding photography. So, like
So,
an outlier.
are we going to see any wedding photography like this for you coming up?
Probably not, but you never know. I'll never say never.
Okay, I just feel like I could picture this happening. Is all.
Well, you have to juxtapose my love of these kinds of films and Bill's love of like musicals. So,
I feel like there's still a crossover there that could happen.
there might be. Uh, in any case,
Okay, but
uh,
anyway, well, when I actually put show notes together for the first time in a few weeks, I will definitely include a link in some of these shots because they're worth seeing.
they are the same.
Also in the news is an announcement that I have mixed feelings about the Empire of the Dead television show, which is a project that is going to bring George Romero's graphic novel to the screen in the form of episodic content. And you and I spoke briefly about this because I read the first volume of that graphic novel,
Right.
and I haven't gone back to that well. I haven't read any of the other ones, even though they were fine. Yeah, I guess I'm not sure that I think that he's going to tell like a really good story here, but I should
Well,
probably read the rest of the books.
a lot of it, and I like you looked at sort of the initial piece of it, like the opener, basically of this graphic novel. I felt like it was very tired and didn't really introduce anything new. It feels really just sort of rehashing the same kind of story. And then they throw in stuff like witches and vampires, which I'm just kind of like, really? And it's sort of like it's almost like, oh, let's do something like The Walking Dead, but let's make it different by having vampires in this. So I'm not sure how I feel about this. Of course, I will probably at least watch whatever the initial the premiere is for this, and I will reserve judgment till then. But nothing about this seems particularly original. And there's like a lot of the characters mirror a lot of the Walking Dead characters. So, and with Fear the Walking Dead coming up, I'm kind of like, is there really room for something like this? But apparently, they feel like there is. So, Um,
Wow. I'm
and
surprised
this
to hear
is,
you ask that question. Is there
I
still
know, I know.
room in the genre?
The thing is, though, is that this is going to be, I mean, it's a Marvel project, it's a Marvel franchise, so maybe we'll see something good with this. I mean, we did see Daredevil, which I personally really enjoyed, so maybe it'll be something like that, and maybe they'll do a different twist on it. And again, this is based on this graphic novel, so maybe they're going to take this and twist it around a little bit to make it more interesting.
I also think it's dangerous to say that George Romero is taking a page from The Walking Dead,
Oh,
as
I
opposed to
know.
he's
The
really just
Vice.
rehashing more of the his stuff that he's
I
been
know.
doing for
I
40
know.
years. And I know you know that
And
too.
that's an unfair thing. I'm just saying in terms of what's on television right now, that's more where I'm coming from on this. So, but willing to give it a shot. Of course, we're going to watch it. We watch everything, but I'm not so sure about this, but I'm looking, I'll keep an open mind and wait to hear more details.
Yeah. So that's out there potentially on the horizon. We still don't have a launch date. Speaking of Fear the
Mm.
Walking Dead, we still don't know when that's coming, do we?
Nope. Oh,
That's a shame.
so we will, at least last I checked, we did not.
Chris Hardwick isn't going to have time for any stand-up comedy if it's basically on like an opposite schedule from the normal Walking Dead. He's going to have to do Talking Dead year round. Which I think is
I know, but he's got definitely has job security, right? So,
absolutely. Okay, so next up is an article that got my blood boiling because I feel like it's misappropriation of the word zombie.
agreed, which is why I put it in there because I wanted to see your blood boil.
Fine. Okay. Well, what is this one about?
This is one of the, similar to the screaming zombie stars. This is about research that's happened recently. That when you put these microbes into a silver solution, the germs basically, as they say, go zombie, and so even though they're dead, they can wipe out their living colleagues, basically.
Okay,
So,
so that's the hypothesis. Immediately there are holes, right? So
of course.
what's your take on the holes in this argument?
Well, I mean, it's and part of this is where they're coming at from this is that the finding in terms of longevity, they use this kind of solution in a lot of hospitals for antibacterial stuff, but it's I don't know. It's first of all, we know that silver does kill supernatural creatures, so that's a problem. I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, and we know that silver
um,
also has strong antibacterial properties.
right, right. So I mean, I think that this is a little bit of a link baity thing, and if you it, and they basically part of it's because they're soaking up the silver, and that's why they're killing their compatriots. So
Right. To me, an analogy that makes sense in our world as opposed to like the world of bacteria is if somebody consumes a shit ton of mercury and dies of mercury poisoning, and then another person comes along and eats that person, the person who ate the person with the mercury poisoning is probably also going to get mercury poisoning and die. It's
right.
not zombie behavior. That's
No,
just
no,
you
no,
ate
and
something
that's
that is poisonous and now
they
you're going
are
to die.
so they're twisting this around a bit, which but I just thought it was funny. And immediately when I started to read the article, I said, "Oh, Stuart's gonna get really upset with this," so I put it in.
I don't know. I don't know if that would be really upset so much as just like a little
Annoyed, I know, I know.
slightly annoyed. And yeah, well, I mean, it's just low hanging fruit, but
It
it
is low
probably
hanging.
does get more clicks, and so who's really to blame? You know?
No, that's true. That's true. But in other news, for those of you who haven't yet seen Maggie, it had pretty limited release, and I don't know that this necessarily bodes well for this film, but it is now available on Amazon and Google Play for rental. I do plan to watch it, so
Yeah, I
um,
reckon we're gonna probably be reviewing that in a couple weeks.
yeah, yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually glad. I personally really like it when things are available for streaming because, a lot of movies don't get the release, like the nationwide release that sort of big budget films do, and it makes it easier and accessible for those of us who may not. I mean, it was here in New York, but very, very briefly, so
Yeah.
I wasn't able to catch it while it was in the theaters, and but now I can watch it from the comfort of my own home. And usually, at this point in time, that's generally more. I'm more excited to do that than to deal with the theater experience because here in New York, until the Alamo Drafthouse opens here, going to the theater is really a roll of the dice, whether you're going to enjoy it or not, and that's mainly due to the other people going. So,
It's an interesting phenomenon that with the onset of streaming and home theater. Not that this is like a new thing. Home theater's been around for decades, but with movies like Life After Beth, which I never even got a chance to see in the theater, there wasn't
right,
one within 100 miles. That should have totally gone to streaming, in my
absolutely,
opinion. And
absolutely,
they would have gotten a lot more of a long tail in
if they
terms
had
of
done that.
sales. Yeah. So I'm
Well,
not sure what goes into these negotiations to get something listed on Amazon. And Netflix seems to pick up and drop titles every month, and it's
hmm
weird, kind of bittersweet the way that you see titles disappearing off of there, but new ones arrive, and it seems way too complicated for the industry's own good. You know what I mean?
agreed. No, it definitely does. It's and I have to say, especially given some of my more recent terrible movie watching experiences in the theater, I would absolutely pay a premium to watch something at home if it was a new release, and
What's a
especially
premium? Can you just throw out a dollar figure
well, okay, so if you go to the theater right now, you're
in New
paying
York?
in New York, you're paying at least $15 for one ticket.
Non matinee, right?
Yeah, non matinee, but even matinee only cuts off maybe a dollar or two.
Holy crap!
Plus going to if you want to get the popcorn and all of that stuff, and that's how the theaters make their money, and I understand that. But the actual and you know what? I wouldn't mind paying that if it was a good movie watching experience. But really, as it is, there are so many just horrible people that go to the theaters that don't understand. Like, what I don't get, it's like all of you are paying the same money, and people are on their phones, they're texting, they're talking. It's really not a fun experience. I mean, I've had a couple of good ones, but like maybe out of the 5 or 6 movies I've seen recently, I had maybe 2 good experiences watching in the theater. So
Now,
I'd probably
you're
I'd probably pay like $20 to watch it at home if it was a new
okay.
release.
That's significant. I mean, that's like buying the hardback on the day of release
It
of a
is,
new
but you
book.
know what? To watch it in the comfort of my own home, we have a projector, we can make our own popcorn and all that fun stuff,
Mm.
and then not to have to deal with the theater people, then I would do it. And I am saying this, but this is the thing. You know what? Alamo Drafthouse really does do it well. If you ever get a chance to go to one of those theaters, you should. But they do, and I'm assuming when they open their theater here in Brooklyn. They have one open in Yonkers right now, but when they open their theater here in Brooklyn, I'm assuming there will be a premium to go and watch things there. Nighthawk Cinema here does something similar, but it's also kind of a pain because it's in Williamsburg, but it's a pain for people to get to, and they do charge a premium for that. And one of the things that you are paying for, well, first of all, they serve adult beverages, which I think is awesome, and food, and within like the theater. So you can get food while you're watching, and
Oh yeah.
surprisingly, it's not distracting at all. But they charge a premium for that too. You also there's no talking or texting. You get ejected if you do it. There's no warning. You're just like if you do it, you're out. And I think you kind of have to have that policy to be able to keep people in line. And so people are going to these theaters expecting a certain experience, and they do pay a premium. So tickets I don't care if they are higher, I'll pay for that as long as I can enjoy what I'm paying to see.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
anyway,
yeah.
that's my rant.
I'm
Again,
excited for you. I'm lucky in that I have the local movie theater. They only have 4 screens and they're pretty small, but they 2 of the theaters have leather seats and cup holders, and they totally sell
nice.
wine and beer and even like food like bratwurst and stuff. Not that that's very
Nice.
good, but it's lucky that. But like I said, 4 screens, they don't have a whole lot of movies, so
Right.
it's like, yeah, slim pickings, but it's a nice place to go watch a film. So also new. Well, we've talked about this. I feel like, yeah, but this was the first trailer we've seen, and it was pretty badass. The movie is entitled Cooties, and it's about a bunch of teachers being assaulted by their students, and I thought it looked hilarious.
It does look hilarious, and this trailer looks great. And I love Alison Pill and Elijah Wood, so I'm looking forward to seeing this.
And Rainn Wilson looks fantastic in this.
Yes.
Yeah, basically, I don't know that it's going to introduce anything particularly new to the genre other than some good laughs.
Yep.
So I'm just going to wait to see it.
All right. So moving on into our review, which we had a sneak peek of what Stuart's thoughts were on this. We're going to be talking about PeterJackson's Dead Alive, also known as Brain Dead in non-US markets. And this is a film that was released in Australia and New Zealand in 1992, and I think some other markets, and then in the US in 1993. This was directed by Peter Jackson, and he also did the screenplay along with a couple of others, Stephen Sinclair and Fran Walsh, his now wife.
Who wrote most of the Lord of the Rings movies.
Right. And
is Stephen Sinclair still involved, or was he when these guys were blowing up globally? Is he part of Wingnut still?
Stephen Sinclair, he worked with him on the Meet the Feebles, and yeah, he was involved in the Two Towers, but not the entire franchise, I guess, or trilogy. But yeah, so they and you see that it's interesting just from looking at the cast of Dead Alive and some of the people involved with it. You see them appearing in different Peter Jackson projects. So like a lot of directors, he kind of keeps the people he likes with him, or at least gives them something, you know what I mean? So a few of the actors in this film are in the Lord of the Rings in forms of like dwarves and things like that. And also some of the writers and things are involved with it. So, but anyway, I had never seen this, and I'd heard a lot about it. And mainly what I had heard about it was amazing that Peter Jackson was actually given the green light to do the Lord of the Rings.
Anything ever again?
This is clearly one of his earlier projects, but just like, and even the idea that he got the Lord of the Rings trilogy based upon the films that he had done at that point. He did Heavenly Creatures, and he had done The Frighteners, and all of these involved some effects. And
Frighteners was actually pretty good.
I actually really liked Frighteners. It's one of those films that I think got really panned when it came out, but I actually thought it was pretty good. It's not like the most amazing film ever, but it was kind of fun. I thought Michael J. Fox was really great in it. It was better than it got credit for, but
yeah, it had good effects.
It really did have good effects. But in any case, back to Brain Dead. This film is. Yeah, I know we have to. This film, it had a $3 million budget, and it did have a lot of effects. And also keep in mind, this was 1992, so you're talking a lot of stop motion. You don't have some of the things that you're normally used to at this point. It definitely, this is a farce. This is a farce, gory, silly horror film. I don't think it's definitely not meant to be taken seriously. It's kind of in line with Evil Dead, and a little bit of, I don't know. Like, I don't want to say Better Off Dead, but it has that feeling too. But I didn't really know what to expect going into this. I heard that it had a cult following, and it was very hard to find. I couldn't find it anywhere other than on YouTube, actually. But it came, when it was released, because of the level of gore within it, in different markets, they actually released a very edited version of this film. Especially, apparently in Germany, they had a problem with it, so there was like a much shorter version that was released there with a lot of the gory scenes cut out. I don't know that would have helped because of the level of gore in this film, and it's a lot.
Yeah, there's like nothing left when you cut out the gore.
Right. So And yeah, I don't. Um, it was a very strange experience to watch this film. You just hated it flat out.
I'd seen it before, and so
Oh,
I
you
knew what I was
had.
getting into. Yeah, I'd seen it for a while. I was with a group of online friends. We on a message board. We were watching a movie once a month or so, and and then we would get into like a chat client and talk about it as we watched. It was like a club thing. So this was one of the titles that we watched. We watched a lot of really bad zombie movies, but this was one of them. And so it was fun when it was in like a mystery science theater environment when you could trash it, but like watching it with an eye for detail and critical response, it was not fun.
No, no.
So this is definitely something I would if I were to watch this with like two or three other people, whatever, and just totally talk shit about it the whole time I was watching it, it would be something else.
This reminds me of more of like a mystery science theater kind
Well, yeah,
of endeavor. I mean, that's really I
that's
don't.
kind of what I'm describing.
Yeah, no, I know. Like I don't. I see what you mean in terms of that. But I don't think you should be taking this kind of a film seriously at all. And I do think that some of the things he did really well with this, the sense of humor, I thought was great, and it was really ridiculous and absurd. I don't think that it's, and I wasn't taking it seriously, so I don't know. I wasn't as bothered by it perhaps as you were.
Well, watch it again and let me know if you still love it.
It's
So,
not
I mean,
loving.
I
It's not loving it.
recognize
I
the
don't. I
humor
don't
when I'm
need.
seeing it. The humor is there, and I'm not like ignoring it. It's just that it was too slapstick, in my opinion. It wasn't actually creating laughs for me. It was just I mean, the music, there's a lot of elements to this film that are good, like the period-esque elements of it. It feels very period. It does have that humor. It has interesting relationships, but then it's all so over the top that I feel like the humor actually undoes, and the over the top violence kind of both work against this as a picture.
Um, I don't know. I see why it has a bit of a loyal following, and it's just very silly. And this is the kind of thing that I think a lot of teenagers might enjoy watching. Um, but I don't. I wasn't bothered as much by it. But as you said, like I have not seen it before, so I can see that this might not take, like, I don't know that I would ever watch it again. It also had a little bit of feeling of Cemetery Man. That
Yeah,
kind of
well,
crazy.
maybe it's just that '90s style of shooting, you know.
Which is interesting because that came out after this. So I'm wondering if maybe that was a little bit influenced by this particular film. Not with the gore, but with some of the weird humor. But, you know, I wasn't as... I thought it was, for what it was, I thought it was fine. It's not the worst film that you and I have ever reviewed, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, that's true.
And, you know, but interesting with that budget, just seeing what that kind of a budget bought in terms of effects. Like, when you compare it to something like Ex Machina now, just such a different world that we're living in now, and what our expectations are now in terms of effects.
Yeah, true. It definitely does. It provides a stark contrast.
Yes.
And it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. '92 is long time ago now.
Yep.
25 odd years ago. And it's for that. It's good for a small budget. It doesn't feel like it was done on a shoestring, and so you got to give him credit for that too. And maybe that's why another reason why producers are looking at PeterJackson, you know, around 2000 and saying, "Hey, this guy can make magic happen. So let's give him a 6-movie mega blockbuster."
Well, some of why he got that blockbuster, though, was because of they basically did sort of a teaser about what they could do for the film. So is it Weta or Weta, the special effects? So they had basically done sort of like mock-ups of possibilities, and that's what sold them on it. I think that they probably should have hidden the fact that he did this film, and hopefully nobody was aware of it. or else I don't think they would ever have agreed.
How'd you
But
like his cameo in this?
yeah, it was fine. But he has a cameo in other stuff too. Like
Yeah, I know.
he's in
He
a
does
lot
one
of
in
stuff.
everything. This
He's
I
fun.
felt like was more him. Like he
Yeah.
had a speaking part. He had close. Well, everybody had a freaking close up on their face of making a weird face, right? Because that was
Yes.
like part of the cinematography approach. Is like, okay, now take a low angle and shoot up into a weird lighting, and then make a crazy face, and that's going to be the whole film.
Yeah. No, it's true.
So yeah, well, either way, his cameo was well disgusting. Like I guess all of them are.
And the other thing that the other little bit of trivia that I liked in this was just the scene that they shot last in this, because they had an overwhelming amount of money, was the scene with Lionel and the weird baby, the zombie baby, Selwyn.
Yeah.
And so it's like they took their extra money, and that's like the whole sequence that they made. And PeterJackson has said that this was his favorite, and I think that this is a little window into crazy PeterJackson's mind, that this was his favorite scene. It's really strange,
Yeah.
odd.
It was a very strange scene, and I will be completely frank. And I basically stopped watching this film after that scene for the second go around.
Well, I don't blame you for that. I don't think you need to get into it too much.
I just wanted to see the priest kick butt in the cemetery. Like
The
that
priest
was.
is the best part.
I feel like that was my favorite part of that was my favorite part of the film the first time I watched it because I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, okay, I could. But then
It goes downhill from there.
it
Yeah.
goes downhill from there, and that's not even halfway through the movie.
I know. And then there's clearly a lot of mommy issues just throughout this film, which, you know, just that particular trope. I was a little bit tired of seeing that, but, I think if you've never seen it before, you really like PeterJackson, you're into like this totally farcical, absurd kind of thing, this could be a fun movie if people want to have like, I don't want to say want to have a drinking game, but maybe, because I think maybe that would help.
I think it would help. It's definitely not an eating game movie.
Definitely not an eating game movie.
Stomach turning effects, and I
yeah.
feel like this is another thing. Is like I had to. I'm not a squeamish person. I
I'm not,
don't
but
mind
it is
looking at
gross.
gore.
It's super gross.
And they're like trying so hard to gross you out. In
They
this.
are, and it's clear. It's just, and there's like crazy absurd things where the character Lionel is like trying to feed the zombies. Why would you be feeding them? And there's just just totally gratuitous gore. And if you're into that kind of thing, this film is for you. But I don't know that this is a must see. But it was fine. I never have to see this again though.
I don't know that it's a must see, but I feel like when you're doing a really completionist approach to zombie media,
It's there.
I
So
knew we had to watch this, and I feel like
you were
I was
dreading it.
dragging
I
my
know.
feet on it for sure. But I feel like, yeah, you probably you do need to see this because of where it came in the chronology of zombie film, like way before it got super popular, but after George Romero. So it's kind of informed by George Romero, but taking its own tack. And it probably has created offspring of its own, other babies.
Oh, I definitely think it has. And that treatment of that particular scene, even though it was ridiculous and honestly quite terrible, I mean, we saw it's definitely, you see that mirrored in other films, and there's references to that in other films. So in terms of finding that kind of canon, it's there, but not necessarily enjoyable to watch. There was another bit of trivia that went along with this film that I thought was kind of interesting, and that was the lawsuit against Wingnut that came from this film, and specifically the cemetery scene.
Yeah, because I mean, this makes sense to me, and in other, well, okay, so the point of the lawsuit was that they filmed a person's actual gravestone, and it ended up in the film,
And it's
that was
I mean,
a privacy invasion.
well, it's a
the
privacy
plaintiffs.
invasion. Where it shows up is where the during the priest sort of battle scene at the very end of it, and admittedly, the stone is in a little bit in shadow. You can read the last name. You can't really read anything else. And ultimately, like the person that brought the lawsuit, he tried to get this pushed in court many, many times. So it's Brad Levy, Wingnut Productions, and brought this up many, many times and got smacked down every time. And basically, they were just like, well, it's a horror film, and you're not really, you're not really coming up with anything, and it will basically clamp down on freedom of speech and expression. So they dismissed the claim. And
So that's curious. So New Zealand courts basically said that it's not an invasion of privacy to
they
film other
did,
people's.
and part of it is whether the question was whether Peter Jackson would be allowed to release the film with that name on there. Otherwise, he was going to have to try to censor it out in post or
I
change
feel like
it
that
in
would be
post.
pretty easy to do, though, right?
Maybe, I don't know. I think maybe it was just the principle of the thing, but ultimately he went out and was able to release it as is. So I think they just felt like if they went that far with this film and used this as precedent, it would just be infringing upon free speech. So
It's so interesting to see what privacy, what approaches different countries take towards privacy, and what expectations the public can have. Obviously, in this country, if you're in a public space, you have no rights as
Right.
far as you can be filmed, and that film can be published. You don't have to sign a waiver, right? And that's why we have paparazzi, who are like, if you're on public land, you can shoot anything that you can see with the naked eye. Is essentially
Right.
the way media law works here, and with a camera,
And
rather.
even in people's homes, if you saw
Right,
that case of late where the photographer was basically taking photos of the apartment building across from him, and they lost the tenants of that building lost the suit. And I have to tell you, I have weird mixed feelings about that, because even though like they are in their own home, but because their blinds were open, they ruled that they should have had the expectation of being filmed.
Yeah, but that's an extension of law that I feel like was already out there, because if people don't
It's
have their
just
curtains closed and you're standing on the sidewalk in front of a first story
Right.
home, you can film the inside of their house.
right. But it's still pretty creepy, if you ask me.
Yeah, it is. I mean, technically, yes, but on the other hand, like, how are you then going to police anybody on public land who just happens to be pointing
No,
their camera
I
towards
know,
something?
and I understand the argument, and I understand why they came out where they did on it. I guess it's more just putting myself, especially into the shoes of those parents, when it's
Yeah.
because I think that's what the biggest art, and the people that brought the suit were the parents whose kids were featured in this particular work of this series, and ultimately they came out that it was for art's sake. It wasn't being used for a commercial purpose, so the parents lost the lawsuit. But from a personal point of view, the idea that somebody could film me in my apartment is totally creepy, or my kids. It's kind of scary. Not that I
I
have.
feel like voyeurism, though, is part of living in the city too, because you have all those windows around you. There's some point when you're looking out your window and you see stuff going on in somebody else's house.
I guess
Right?
so, but there's also this weird kind of thing, like you then look away because you're kind of like, I guess maybe some people don't.
I feel like for every one of you, there's five of the other people.
I know you're probably right, but it's just a little, I don't know, but
Either way, not necessarily zombie related, but
No,
interesting,
but
an interesting
interesting.
side bit to this film,
right.
which I'm obviously more interested in talking about than the
Then
film
the
itself.
film. Well, that's why I brought it up, because I figured you'd want that. But
Yeah, privacy, zombie films.
Privacy, zombies. But one of the things I thought was interesting though about this particular case is that, you know what, until this person brought the suit, I don't know that people would have really noticed that gravestone.
Right.
I think that
Yeah.
they brought a lot more attention to this, and
Yeah,
maybe
now
they
it's
were
an Easter egg, right?
right, and maybe they were banking on the fact that this wouldn't actually be released and that it would be changed, and maybe that's where they were coming from on this. But just by virtue of filing multiple claims and trying to get this taken out, I think that they brought us so much more attention to it, because I was looking for it while I watched it. So I think that they kind of ended up creating the problem more than helping the problem in the end. So in any case, so that's pretty much all I have to say about this.
Yeah.
But it did actually, it kind of brought, just even in doing the research for this film, it just reminded me. Did you ever see Heavenly Creatures?
I feel like I have, but I have no recollection of what that film is about.
It's just interesting to me that he went from this kind of film to Heavenly Creatures to Frighteners. Like he did, and the effects in Heavenly Creatures at the time were just amazing. He did a lot of the blending of worlds. There was a lot of animation. I guess at that time, sort of nascent CGI. And it was at the time super amazing. And it makes me want to rewatch it and see if I'm remembering it as I remembered it, because I watched that in high school. Just seeing if it holds up, which I'm wondering if it does or not. But the storyline and his storytelling was very good, but the total polar opposite of this film. Yeah. So it's just interesting watching his trajectory as a director and a writer, and how he decided to move forward, and just a curious path, I guess, and not necessarily the one you were expecting. So
it's true. He does have a very
he's a little bit of a chameleon.
Interesting coming up story. But yeah, I basically I would be happy not to have to watch this movie again. But well, I feel like I've made my points, and that I feel like on some small level, it is important to the genre.
Well, I'm sorry I forced you to watch it again, or at least half of it again.
These are the sacrifices we make at Reanimated.
It is. But that's all I have to say. But what are we going to be talking about next week?
So next time we get together at Reanimated this is episode 74. For our 75th episode, our quarter century, or 3/4 century rather, we will be talking about a book. So
and what book would that be?
It's The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, he's a British author, right?
Yes.
And this book is set in England. So that is what we'll be talking about, and I'm not going to lie, I'm pretty freaking excited.
I am excited too. I'm about halfway through it, so I'll have to finish it up by the time we talk, but so far so good, and it's definitely one of those books that I'm having a hard time putting down, and I've had to put it down. So I am looking forward to some uninterrupted reading time to just round it up, but it's got me hooked. So
good. Okay. Well, in the meantime, if anybody wants to get in touch, you can email us at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or tweet at us at reanimatedpcast on the tweets, and our website is reanimatedpodcast.com. And so until next time, goodbye.
And farewell.